Now, the US is preparing to announce another $800 million in military assistance for Ukraine. Delighted to be joined in the studio by the Interim US Ambassador to the UK. That's Reeker. So much to talk about. First of all, thank you very much indeed for joining us on the programme. I'm going to have to put my glasses on because my eyesight's not what it used to be.
We've all been there, Kate.
Yeah.
Yes. Good morning.
Let's talk. Good morning to you. I wondered if I could start with a conversation about Boris Johnson, please, if I may. President Zelensky is saying that he is an example and he is helping more than other leaders, in his words. Parliament, meantime, as you know, is calling for him to resign. What's Washington's view of Partygate?
Well, I think for Washington, what has been most important in these days, and you saw it yesterday with the call that President Biden convened of G7 and other leaders to discuss the latest efforts in Ukraine and what we're doing incredibly well knitted up to help Ukraine. And that includes, of course, the UK, which has been tremendous, has shown leadership in our efforts to support Ukraine under Vladimir Putin's brutal violations, this war of choice that Putin has chosen to attack the Ukrainian people, its sovereignty, thinking he could divide the West. And indeed, the West has been remarkably united, more than I think many expected, under the leadership of leaders like those from the G7, and providing on a daily basis what Ukraine needs to fight this war, what they are doing to defend themselves, their sovereignty, even though we see every day more brutal action in a sort of medieval way from Vladimir Putin.
So Washington doesn't have a view about the internal politics in the UK?
We deal with the world as we find it every day. We watch with interest. The UK has politics, just as we have in the United States, and the UK has institutions. This is the marvel of democracy as we experience it. Would that the Russian people could express different views and debate. I don't think there's much discussion about what Vladimir Putin does on any given day as we see what he inflicts upon
Perhaps I could put it in a different way then. Does Washington find our Prime Minister to be trustworthy?
I think they work well with the leadership in the UK. The coordination is just remarkable. What I watch every day from Nine Elms, from our embassy here, leading the team which engages with the UK at a whole of government level, is watch as our leaders speak, our ministers speak, coordinate with the Ukrainians in terms of how we help them, but in dealing with all the other challenges we have in the world these days. Every day presents great challenges in terms of transatlantic security, global security, and we have no better partner than that, than the United Kingdom.
And as far as that is concerned, you find Boris Johnson to be a trustworthy ally?
I think we work with every day with the leadership here. We've had a very good cooperation, remarkable unity within the alliance, the leadership in the G7, COP26, and of course what we've all dealt with in terms of COVID-19, these letters and numbers that have defined certainly the 10 months that I've been in Great Britain.
Is that a yes, Mr. Ambassador, or a no?
It is that we will keep working on this most important relationship. There's no other relationship like it, truly, what the US and the UK do on a daily basis. And I've been able to see that really in spades from where I sit.
What would happen if we changed leaders during the situation as we see it in Ukraine at the moment? What difference would that make for the United States?
We deal with the day as we find it every morning. And it's a little early now in Washington, but I think my colleagues will be waking up. They'll be watching Sky News. They'll be looking for the latest from the Britain, just as you do on what's happening in Washington, in our politics, in our foreign policy. And my job as a diplomat leading the team here is to make sure that we are doing our utmost to make the most out of this relationship, to strengthen it, and work on behalf of, obviously, the people of the United States, but here with our great partners, the people of the United Kingdom.
How do you think the NATO relationship overall is working when it comes to dealing with the situation in Ukraine at the moment?
It is remarkable to see how the alliance has come together. Vladimir Putin thought that he would find a divided West, a divided alliance, that he would be able to drive wedges. He was sorely mistaken. And what is great about our democracies, those that, the 30 countries that are in NATO and our other partners, is that we can have the raucous debates. We can have the white tops on the rough seas that we've seen in past years in the alliance, airing differences and approaches, but in the end, we've actually made the alliance stronger. We've seen that in the extraordinary summit that was held just a couple weeks ago. In Brussels, I think we'll see it again in Madrid when the heads of state and government meet from NATO to look at a way forward.
And they meet regularly electronically as well.
That's right. And we use other structures like the G7, the group that convened yesterday to discuss the latest. You mentioned the latest round of military support that we are providing to Ukraine, the humanitarian support for what is really a truly awful situation, as we've seen what Vladimir Putin has inflicted upon the people of Ukraine.
I mean, there has been, I think it's fair to say, a very clear step change when it comes to sort of lethal support that you were offering President Zelensky. What's happened for you to decide that that is the right way forward?
I think there's been a constant dialogue and consultation with the Ukrainian leadership on what they need. And I think what we've seen is this also remarkable effort by the Ukrainians, a profile and courage, not only their leader, President Zelensky, whom I've met and know, but the Ukrainian people. I saw in Zelensky, even as a candidate, someone different who had great qualities of leadership, and that's what we're seeing now. And I think he's an inspiration not only to his own people, which is most important, but to so many of us. And just like in the United States, here in the UK, the outpouring of support, the understanding, it recalls another era, frankly, when we were brutalized by dictators, by fascists, and Vladimir Putin is doing a good job of repeating some of those historical wrongs.
We've spoken before, Mr. Ambassador, and we're honoured to have you again. Last time we spoke, you refused to rule out US troops entering Ukraine. What would it take for US troops to go into Ukraine?
Clearly, that's a decision for the president, and he's been very clear about that.
But
We are not going to war with Russia. We want to support Ukraine. We want to, of course, protect our allies who are under NATO, who do fall under the Article 5, the sacred bond that has made NATO so successful for these 70-plus years in terms of defending an area of peace. NATO, a defensive alliance, threatening no one, not threatening Vladimir Putin, not threatening Russia. And here you have, in fact, Putin attacking Russian-speaking cities like Kharkiv. And so we will continue to support the Ukrainian people who, again, have shown this remarkable resilience. And I think that's been a surprise to Putin in his calculus, obviously a lot of miscalculation on his part.
I've been speaking to quite a few previous ambassadors on the show over the last couple of days. They've all been warning about concerns about nuclear capability of Russia. How seriously does America take it?
Well, as our Director of Central Intelligence, Bill Burns, a former ambassador and State Department official whom I know well, said in open testimony last week, this is something we have to be concerned about. Putin himself has raised this. So certainly it's something we have to watch very closely. The kind of brutality that Putin has enacted, we've seen it before, but it's hard to imagine what he's doing, and it seems like there's very little that would stop him, particularly when he makes those kinds of threats.
Do you think he's capable of a nuclear strike?
I think we're seeing that Vladimir Putin is very unpredictable, has been out of touch, miscalculated terribly, and what we need to do is maintain the unity of our alliance in terms of defending our interests and supporting Ukraine in their efforts to protect their sovereignty, their independence, and their very lives.
I recently spoke to a very high-up politician here in the UK, and I said, you know, why are we not being tougher with Russia? And he said, because he's got nukes.
I think there's a calculation you have to make, and President Biden has shown remarkable leadership from the beginning. If you followed his campaign, if you followed him as a senator, as vice president, he never saw Vladimir Putin for anything than what he is and what he's showing himself to be today. But the president was very ready to work with Putin. He made that clear. He wanted a more predictable, more stable relationship. From the first day of the presidency last year, when he came into office, President Biden extended the New START treaty, not for a year or some months, but for 5 years. He created a strategic stability dialogue so Putin could raise the issues that seemed to concern him. We still can't see where he feels he has some threat to his security. No, what Putin was afraid of was democracy. And the president made that clear too last March when he spoke about this inflection point that we face between democracy and autocracy, and how we have to show that democracy can deliver. And I think we in the West have unified around that purpose. The institutions of democracy that may be different among us are working not only to defend our interests, but to promote and support the Ukrainians.
But how cautious does President Biden need to be not to poke that Russian bear? Because he's talked about him being a dictator, he's talked about genocide, he's talked about regime change. It seems to me that President Putin needs to be offered an off-ramp, and when you start to throw those allegations at him, it's just poking him.
I think he's had an off-ramp at every moment. If you go back and look at all of the discussions as we put forward the intelligence, we made in an extraordinary way, declassifying intelligence information to show the world what Putin was preparing to do, to tell the Ukrainians, you've got to be aware of what's happening on your border. We continuously talked about looking for diplomatic solutions, off-ramps, if you will.
That's not diplomatic language, though, is it? That's not diplomatic language.
I think we have to also tell the truth, and we see it. Your reporters are there showing these graphic, horrible pictures of things no one expected in Europe in 2022. And yet Vladimir Putin, who claims to be trying to defend some interest, some Russian interest, is murdering Russian speakers, is bombarding them in a truly medieval way on a daily basis. We see now in the East as he moves again on the Donbass, what is really brutal. So we have to make clear that we see what's going on, that there has to be responsibility and accountability, but also make clear that diplomacy had always been the option and the answer. And Putin himself can work with the narrative that he decides. He controls what his people hear and, frankly, what they think.
I saw yesterday that President Biden apparently has said that he's going to run again at the next election. What do you think?
I think he'll make that decision when the time comes. And, our institutions, our elections are very clear and set every 4 years. We have a clear election date and a clear date when the president is sworn in, whether re-elected or a new president, as we've seen just in the past couple of years. The world watches that. Americans watch that. I think we're proud of our institutions, living by our Constitution to form a more perfect union, never having said we've gotten there.
I'm just looking at his age, though. He'll be a couple of weeks off 82 at the next election. Is now the time to potentially move aside for younger candidates?
I think the president has to make that decision, and ultimately it's the voters in the United States that will make that decision. But President Biden has been showing tremendous, consistent leadership, and doing exactly what he said he would do, and certainly in the foreign policy realm, which is my focus and the reason I'm here at the president's and the secretary's behest in the United Kingdom, is to work every day to improve, strengthen our alliances, our partnerships, and there is no better and no more important alliance than with the United Kingdom. Yeah,
I'm often asked when I'm going to retire, I give them my best Paddington stare and then we move on. I mean, do you feel that at 82, the president might be thinking about he's been in politics all his life.
I haven't asked him, although I had some very good conversations with him on the margins of the COP in Glasgow last November. And we were very focused. He was extremely energized and animated by the issues at COP. Again, this is another inflection point, as he's talked about it, the issue of climate change, almost existential. And we saw great cooperation and working together with the UK, which was hosting COP26, with the US back in that Paris process, setting some real goals for a net zero for this important decade ahead. And I think while we deal with the challenges of energy prices and other things, it makes clear that now is the time to be working toward getting off those hydrocarbons.
He's got lots to do and he's not ready to put his feet up yet, then.
He's got a lot to do and he works hard every single day. That I know quite well.
How concerned do you think he might be about President Trump running next time?
He's spoken to that. Obviously, people will decide, parties will decide who their candidates will be in 2024. It's a long way till 2024.
It's around the corner, though, isn't it? You're almost at the midterms.
Midterms come, midterms go. The institutions endure. And what is most important, and what my focus is that our relationship not only endure but thrive. And that's what Secretary Biden sent me here to focus on.
Do you think he might come over for the Queen's Jubilee?
You know, I think the president has been in the UK twice. His two big trips, his first trips as president, both included the United Kingdom. I know he'll be watching. We're all excited, and the admiration across the United States, beginning with President Biden, for Her Majesty is really quite something. 70 years. Imagine what that has encompassed and where we have come. And frankly, it's been 70 years of broadly peace and stability in this transatlantic space, and I think I, for one, am a huge fan.
Will you still be here when it's the Jubilee?
We're waiting to see when the new ambassador can arrive.
Why is that? Because we've had all of the rest of the European countries have got theirs. And no disrespect, Mr. Ambassador, but
actually, okay, I have to tell you there are a number of European countries that don't as well. The UK is the only country where the Secretary of State said we need to send someone. In my case, the head of the European Bureau at the State Department, an ambassador, a career diplomat who he asked to come here and lead our mission, our large and diverse mission. We have representatives from some 44 U.S. government departments, agencies, bureaus that work with their UK counterparts on a bilateral basis, but because it's London and because it's the U.S. and the UK, it really has a global impact. And that's what I'm doing here. And of course, I've promised the Secretary I'll stay till the new ambassador who's been nominated, who is waiting for our process to work. We have a separation of powers, and now the legislative branch, the Senate, needs to have a hearing and offer its advice and consent.
I think that's been delayed because of Madeleine Albright's funeral, I think.
That's right. The hearing was announced for the 27th, and Madeleine Albright, for whom I worked as a spokesman for many years, passed away, of course, and her funeral will be on the 27th of April.
We're out of time, but I just wondered what memories you'll be taking away from London.
Oh, there'll be so many, but I think perhaps the most important that will always be with me is September 11th last year, 2021, when Her Majesty the Queen not only instructed the band at the changing of the guard at Windsor Castle to play the Star-Spangled Banner, as she had done 20 years before after that fateful day, but she requested my presence as the Chargé d'Affaires there at Windsor Castle. That was an incredibly moving moment for me to represent my country with our closest friends and allies at this gesture that Her Majesty had made. And so it's a perfect opportunity, perhaps a day early, to wish a very happy 96th birthday to Her Majesty the Queen. Okay, Mr. Ambassador, it's an honour as always. Thank you so much for taking the time. We really appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Thank you.